Well, my name is Stuart. I just want to welcome you on behalf of SA International to today's webinar. We're going to be talking about creating interactive templates with the Flexi Design Editor. It's a rather obscure title, but the total effect is very useful and can save you a lot of time in creating your designs. Our instructor today will be Mark Rugen. Mark has about 25 years of experience in the sign industry, and he spends his time these days traveling around the country teaching people all he knows about Flexi, giving them all the tips and tricks to help them save time and money using Flexi software. We'll take 15 minutes to go over his presentation on the Design Editor. Afterwards, we will have a Q&A session where you can ask him any questions that you had about today's webinar with the Design Editor, or if you have any other questions about Flexi. Like I said, Mark knows lots of those tips and tricks, and he'll be able to help you out with any questions that you do have. So if you think of any questions while you're watching, just go ahead and type them in the chat window down there, and we'll get to them after the presentation. And take it away, Mark.
Perfect. Thank you, Stuart, and thanks everybody for showing up. We appreciate it. By the way, Ryan, my picture is upside down just to get attention. Anyway, good morning, everyone. David, Anthony, John, Ryan, Emmerich, there's so many people signed on. We appreciate it so much, literally hundreds, and we are very excited to bring this presentation to you. As Stuart mentioned, it's about 15 minutes, and it's using Flexi, and I'm going to show you a couple of examples of what you can do with Flexi, either using it with Illustrator or using it by itself, and we'll get some questions answered after that as well, and I think you'll really enjoy that. So let's get right into it. Here you see your standard Flexi. I am using Flexi 12, but what I'm going to be doing today will work on previous versions as well, perhaps not as well, but there's some things you can do with Flexi that are very much more, I'm not going to say complicated, but sophisticated. It's not just, typing in stuff and printing and that sort of thing. We want to really get into the design side of it today, so that's what we're going to talk about. I want to talk about, first of all, starting off here. I'm going to open a file that I purchased, and I'll tell you how you can get it also. And it's a really cool thing that one of the folks that uses Flexi has done, and you can get this, I'll tell you in a second how to get it, but it's a really cool thing that they've done. And one of the advantages of Flexi is that you can use what's called transparent bitmaps, and this is something that those of you perhaps more familiar with Photoshop, Illustrator, and so forth are familiar with. But basically what it allows you to do is to construct designs either on an automobile or in this case a t-shirt. And then you kind of make it interactive by using a layering system in Flexi. Now let me start off by talking about the layering system. So if we go up to the very top of Flexi over here, there's a thing called the DesignEditor. Okay, so I'm going to turn that on. And this is what we call the ability to work with layers in Flexi. Now when I say layers, I want to make absolutely sure everyone understands I'm not talking about exactly the same thing as you would find in Adobe products. There's some similarities and there's some differences, but in today's discussion we're going to talk about Flexi's layers, okay? So basically what this person has done here, if I click on layers, is they've created an overlay layer. They've got a layer 1, they've got a substrate, a shirt color, and so forth in this, right? Now, if you're interested in getting this in just a moment, I'll give you the website where you can go get this. But this is, let me look at the Objects tab as well. So I click on Objects, and those of you that have attended our training classes know what that means, is these are different parts to a design. And I'm going to open up the page here, and you'll see there's a whole bunch of parts to this, different objects to this particular graphic. So this particular person has actually made these transparent bitmaps, so they've included it in the overlay layer. They've got a shirt color layer and so forth. How does all this work in Flexi? Well, it's kind of cool, actually. In Flexi, what you can do is you can actually take your designs, such as this one. Let me open that again. Hang on a second. I just want to open that one more time. There we go. So you can take your designs like this, and because of the layering system that we've been talking about, let's say we take just a regular graphic here. This is just a rectangle, right? All I'm going to do is just draw a rectangle around the T-shirt like this, and when I let go, you'll see it actually paints that T-shirt up just like that. So you literally then could go through and say, what color T-shirt do you want? Do you want red? Do you want black? Do you want blue? Should it be this shade and so forth? And that's one thing you can do with this particular template that the person has made. I think that's a pretty cool attribute to be able to do that, right? But more importantly, you can also, and I'm going to zoom back just a hair here. More importantly, you can also take bitmaps, and I'm going to import a bitmap here. It can be any design that you want. You can go through all your designs that you have available to you and so forth. Whatever it is that you've got that you like. Maybe I'll just take this guy right here. Okay, and this is just a template of a Batman T-shirt or something like that, right? Batman poster. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag that over to the top of my template over here. And what do you think happened? It actually, I can resize this. I can resize the graphic if I want to. I can place it. I can make it smaller, larger. What's interesting is it's automatically then contained within the shirt here. And again, this is not necessarily for producing this particular T-shirt, although it could be used for that. This is actually, a great way to show your customer, here's what I can do for you on this particular design. So when we talk about these layering systems and so forth, I'm gonna actually do something that's more of a wrap design for you, okay? That you would do, say, for vehicle wraps, to be able to show your customer what it's going to look like before you wrap the vehicle, okay? But this was done outside of Flexi. This particular graphic was actually made outside of Flexi. So what happened was you have a graphic then that got produced in Illustrator and then brought into Flexi. So let's see, I'm having trouble. And we should be pretty close to back on.
Okay, we can see your screen. There we are.
You can see the screen there. Good.
Yep. So we can get that T-shirt loaded up.
Must have been some little glitch in the folks running the system there. So let me pick it back up. So we were working with that little T-shirt thing. Now, if you want that particular template, that particular one, it's easy to get. All you got to do, let me just make this bigger here. All you got to do is just go to www, as we normally say, right? And then Flexi, Flexi, plugins.com. Now again, I'm not, this is nothing to do with SAI. I'm sharing this with our community here of Flexi users. The guy that runs this, Anthony Paris, has done a good job. He's a good designer. And
Anthony actually gave us the link in the comments here.
Cool. And you guys go in there and take a look at it. He's got a really great site. So I just wanted to thank him for that site. It's a really good one. Now let me change a couple of preferences over here that probably got zapped out. Okay, good. All right, so now let's get into doing something similar to that, but using Flexi as a basis for it, okay? So basically, I'm going to open up a similar final product. Here's what I'm after, right? This is what I'm after doing right here. And I actually did this right inside of Flexi, okay? I did not go to Illustrator or anything. I'm doing like a wrap design, and you can see the windows closed. There's the doorknobs here and so forth. I won't get as detailed in our live example, but you can do this right inside of Flexi, okay? And that's helpful, okay? So let's open up a file that is just the basic file. We're just going to start with this. So here's where we're going to actually teach this lesson. And I would remind everyone today, and again, thank you for your patience, we're recording this, and we'll put together the clean recording, and we'll actually post this on the YouTube page, and you guys will be able to watch it again and again, so you can actually write the steps down. It's not hard, and in fact, I think in the when we redo our training DVD that we have available for everyone, we'll definitely add this lesson to it. But okay. So let's take a look at this graphic here. This is just a single image of the van. So the very first step is to make a copy of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold the Control key down and I'm just going to make a copy. So I have 2 copies of this graphic. And I'm going to take both of those. I'm selecting both of those with Control 5, or you can use your alignment tools. I'm just going to overlap them so they're exactly on top of each other. That's important. I'm going to line them both up. And I'm going to look at my design editor here. And in particular, I'm going to go to the first tab where there's layers. Okay? So the very first thing I'm going to do is create a new layer. I'm just going to click on this tab right here that says New, and that's going to be a new layer. So I have Layer 1, I have Layer 2. You can name these layers anything you want, as you saw in the previous example. He named it T-shirt, he named it overlay, and so forth. Name them any way you like. I'm not going to do it in this example. It's not needed. And I'm going to go to my Objects tab here. So I have my 2 layers, okay? So the very bottom one here, the one that's labeled bitmap 82, that's the image that's actually on the bottom underneath, and then the bitmap 86 is the copy that I just made. Okay, so I am going to rename these. I'm just going to click in there, and I'm going to call this Original, just to identify it. Okay, and I'm going to go up here to this one, and I'm going to call that Design, just so I know the difference between the two and don't have a generic name. The other thing I'm going to do to my original layer, right, the one on the bottom, I'm going to right-click in my design editor here, and I'm actually going to go over to Lock, and I'm going to lock it in place. So basically what locking does is it glues the image to your screen, and you cannot edit it or move it or do anything with it. It's just there. And you'll see why that's important in just a moment. Okay? I'm also going to take my design layer, and I'm just going to move that. I'm just dragging and dropping it up to my Layer 2. So what the reason for layers is I have Layer 1, and I'm not going to do anything on that layer. I'm just using it as the basic image. But on Layer 2, I'm going to actually do some things to work with masking and combining and a few other things. Okay? So bear with me here, and hopefully we'll take a good look at that in just a second. Okay? So I'm going to click on the second layer up here where it says Design. And one of the things I want to do is I want to eliminate all of the graphics behind the van. And I also I'm going to be able to use the side of the van for the placement of my graphic. So the very first thing, and I'm going to do this for the sake of time, I'm not going to do the windows over here or the door handles or the window here on purpose. But normally what you would do is you would take your digitizer pin here, okay, the Bezier path tool, as they call it, and you would actually digitize the window, digitize around the, around the door handles or whatever objects that you don't want the image to be on. Okay, so in other words, if you want to show the window through the image that we're going to drag on here, like the T-shirt, you would definitely construct an image around the window. Okay, I'm not going to do that, like I said, just for the sake of time. Now I'm going to take my tool and I'm going to carefully just start somewhere on here, and I'm going to actually construct a vector around the outside of the van. So this is, something that you would, if you wanted to do this really accurately, you probably would zoom in and zoom out and do some things, to try to make sure this is super accurate. You want to go just around the outside of the vehicle here. Let me just pause that for a second. So I'm just clicking around the actual bit. It's probably very hard to see online there because this is a thin line, right? So I'm just circling around the window here, down to the bottom, and across, and then go around the wheel well, like this. And again, you can once you finish this, you can do a little editing, smooth the lines out, straighten them out, make them more accurate, do whatever you need to do, and go around the light here. And then I get to the finish point here. It says Close Path, and I'm going to click on that. So basically, I'll paint that red so you can see it. It's basically the outline of the van, right? And again, I would have had the windows and the door handles and so forth. The next step, okay, is to simply right-click, is to make sure that you've selected that outline. You can see it's selected. And I have the outline selected now, the red part. I'm going to hold my control key down, or my shift key, excuse me, and I'm also going to select the bitmap. So I'm selecting the bitmap on layer 2 as well as the red patch that you see there. I'm going to go to my bitmap menu, and I'm going to choose a command called Convert Shape to Marquee. So I'm going to click on that. Now, it may be a little difficult to see, but basically what it did was it took the vector outline and converted it into a selected area. And that's almost like using your bitmap editing tools when you're selecting areas. That's called a marquee, and that's what it's done. It's actually the shape of the van itself. Now I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to say Select and Invert Selection. So it's going to select everything except the van. And at that point, when I click Delete, it's going to delete the outline around the van. So now you have just the shape of the van. And if you had the window and the door handles and so forth, those would actually be knocked out, right? So this is the first step. Now go back. I'm going to go back to my bitmap and select, and I'm going to invert it again. So I'm back to the outline of the van again, okay, just the van. And I'm going to go back to my bitmap, and I'm going to say convert it back to a shape again. Okay, so I'm converting it to a shape. Now I have the van selected, but it doesn't have that graphic in the background, and I have my vector selected. So I'm going to take the bitmap on layer 2 and the vector over here, and I'm going to right-click on it. I've selected both of those, and I'm going to do a mask. Now it looks like the background came right back, and it did, but that's layer 1 showing through. So I have two things right now on my screen. I have layer 1, which is the total picture, and I have layer 2, which is just the shape of the van on top of layer 1. Okay, that's those two things is what I have right now. Now again, I'm going to pull these up here so I can. Sorry about that. And again, you can there's a really slight vector artwork. It's actually got a mask on it. Okay. So one of the things that you can do to when I drag my image on here, try this again. Looks like we're having trouble with our service here. I'm going to come back. I think it's just in and out. It should come right back.
We see the screen again. Yep, there we go. We've got the van.
All right. Okay. So here's my van, and I have it outlined with that mask around it like that, right? And it's just the van. So one of the things we want to do when we place our image on top of this to show it as a wrap, we want to see like the grooves and the different places where there's movement in the van. It's not a flat surface, in other words. We want to make it look realistic. So I'm going to open up my layer editor here, and here's my design right here. I'm going to click on that design. That's selecting just the bitmap, okay? And I'm going to go to my bitmap menu up here, and I can work with my filters if I want to kind of enhance that bitmap. So I'm just going to show you what I mean here. I'm going to go to brightness and contrast, for instance. See how it highlights just the van? And in my design editor over here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the saturation all the way down. That kind of takes the color out of the van. So if you had a lighter color or a darker color, it would just sort of take out the actual color. It wouldn't be blue or red anymore. It'd just be a grayscale image. And then you can increase the brightness and contrast as you will to increase the definition of those grooves and so forth. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to say OK to that. Okay? All right. Now, let me back this up just a bit. And let's go into our file menu and let's import a file. And I'm going to select a file that we can place on our van here. Okay. Let's grab this one. That's fine. Don't need to drag it. Let's just import it. And it's rather big. That's fine. Let's make sure we see everything here. Okay, and one of the things I would recommend to you folks to do just on a normal basis, and I'm going to show you why here, you notice here as I'm dragging this down to the size of the van here, blow that up again, as I'm dragging this down like this, you can actually see the van showing through on the backside. The reason that happens is because in the View menu, I've turned on Show Preview. You know, if you don't have that on and I start resizing this, you can't see behind it. right? But what happens is when you do the show preview, it actually shows you like underneath your image there. That's kind of a cool little trick to kind of get you started. You know, you can shape this any way you want, you know, place it on here, wherever you want to put it, doesn't matter. And I've got my band, I've got it kind of laid out where I want it on top of the band. So you'll notice in my design editor that bitmap is on top of everything. So all I really need to do now at this point is drag my design down so that it's just above the one that says design here. So I'll just take design and drag it underneath, right? And guess what it did? What it did was you can see it's laying it out the shape of the van here, right? Let me go back to my bitmap and just increase the size a little bit and go up. See how it's kind of cutting it off on there? But I don't see the actual contours on the actual van itself. Why is that? It's because the van, it's on top of that image of the van, right? So a really cool thing I can do in Flexi is I have the bitmap selected. I'm going to go to my effects menu and I'm just going to choose lens and transparent. And watch what happens. See what it did? You can now see through the actual bitmap and you're seeing the contours on the bottom. And then you can just control the amount of transparency you want in that menu there, kind of bring it up or down until you get it to a certain point that you want to show your customer. And it's going to give you the impression that that is the way it's going to look on that van. And again, you can play with this a lot. You can go back into just your design contour here. See, I clicked right on design itself. And if I want to, I can go back in and I can play with my filters here, like my brightness and contrast. See how it's doing right there? And just, you know, change that. If I want to go lower so I get more contrast out of this thing, so in other words, I'm getting less brightness, in other words, and so forth. And when I click OK, then the van gets darker, that gray part, but it shows more contours through. I could work with sharpness. I could do a lot of things. And just playing around a little bit, I'm going to be able to get an image on my graphic here that's pretty cool. I mean, when you look at this thing here, again, I can stretch it all the way and it'll go all the way to the front there. Had I cut out the window and the door handles and so forth, you would have actually seen those show through. Or in this case, as you're seeing here, because the window is a little darker, and you know as well as I do when you're using that window perf, you might get a change in color a little bit. You can actually see that change of color happen. And those of you guys that are really cool, like Anthony, I'm counting on you on this, you could go in and actually change the brightness and contrast of just the window and get that perf look to it. You might even put in the halftone there and get a perf look to that window. There's a lot of stuff you can do with Flexi. This is really cool, and I did it all inside of Flexi. I didn't have to go out and work with transparent bitmaps and so forth. You can do that. I'm not objecting to that. But you can use some of this stuff right inside of Flexi. So I did this with a van. I could have opened that T-shirt graphic and done it with that. I've done this with like iPhone images. Any photograph that you've got out there that you want to use, you can use this method. And it's really all about working with these layers. And look how simple that is to work with. You know, just typing in the layer 1 and separating it into layer 2, locking it, and then just adding these at will. Very, very, very good. Again, you can add your phone numbers and all the other stuff that you need to this and move it around. So working with layers in DesignEditor gives you a great deal of capability in Flexi. And I know that's going to help you guys a whole lot. So that's it, Stuart. I hope everybody enjoyed. I'm sorry about the little glitches. I don't know what's going on there. It's maybe it's a spring break thing or something. I don't know. But we'll take some questions now if you'd like to ask some. Be happy to take those.
Okay, looks like we've already got a couple written down here. Ryan asked, is there any way you can PDF something with an opacity without it becoming a solid color?
PDF something with opacity without it becoming a color. The answer is yes, but the other answer is just like any other product, when you bring in a file like that into Flexi, it's going to look at the layering system for that transparency and determine whether or not it considers it transparent or it considers it as a solid color. So sometimes it does work properly and then other times it does not. Flexi will identify transparent bitmaps as a transparency, but sometimes if you don't define it that way, it will come in as a solid color.
Okay. And then Michael wanted to know, how do you get the halftone?
The halftone, what I would do in Flexi, you have the ability in the Edit menu up here. You have in Preferences, there's a File Path tab. And that File Path tab, the very bottom one says Adobe Plugins right down here. So if you have Adobe Photoshop in particular, you can use the plugins in Flexi. And one of the plugins, are actually that's built into Photoshop, if you browse to where those plugins are, there's one in here called Filters, and there's another one actually over here. Let's see if I don't see it in mine, but usually there's a Filters one here. Instead of plugins, there's actually one under Photoshop usually called Filters, and it actually has a good halftone capability. So you would literally select a part of a bitmap, and then you could apply that halftone to it. So you would do it as a plugin. That's how you would work it in Flexi.
Okay. And then Kelly wanted to know, after you create this, like the van template, can you print it?
The one that we see right now, the absolutely yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you could literally go here if you had this selected. There's two things. Number one, you could go to the File menu and just use the regular print menu, which would show it to your customer so that you could actually show them what it's going to look like. Or if you were designing this at full size, so if you scaled that image to full size, then the actual wrap itself, what you could do, let me show you. I'm going to go to my layering over here, right? My layers. And I'm going to turn off layer 1. I'm just going to say, don't show me layer 1. And basically what that does is that shows you the actual image itself, right? And then I could also go over here to my objects, and I could take my, I could turn off basically the design in the background. Let me just move it and show you what I mean. I'll just move it over here. I just moved it to a different layer, and this is actually the printable object right here. If I unmask this, or if I turn off my transparency, that's actually the shape that we're trying to print. And naturally what I would do in this case is when I print it, I would want to leave obviously some overlap. So I would actually expand this a little bit, make it, in other words, 6 inches or so larger than it is, and you would have a little overlap to work with. It depends on how much overlap you like working with. So yes, you can print it. You can actually use the full design, and then you can turn on and off these layers and literally show or not show the parts that you want to print or cut.
Okay. And let's see here. Okay, Juan, we will be posting this video on YouTube. We'll even clean it up so we don't have to watch the delays. So it'll be a little bit smoother. And then
Okay.
Cody asked, must any picture be imported as a bitmap, or can you use a JPEG for a photo?
Yeah, you can use actually any image. You could actually even use vectors. So if you have EPS files, TIFF, JPEGs, whatever the format is, using the layering system that we just showed you there, you can use those in that masking and do the very same thing we just did. So it doesn't have to be just a JPEG. It doesn't have to be just a TIFF or a bitmap. You literally could use any file that imports into Flexi. So if I go back to my my objects, for instance, here's my design, there's my bitmap. I'm just going to delete that one, right? So I've just taken it off of there. And let's go back a little ways here, just a little bit, right? And a file and import a different one. So any importable file that's available in Flexi. So any of these formats that you see here, even if it's an Illustrator file or a PDF or any of these files that you import, it makes no difference at all, right? So if you have a file that you want to put on here, I don't know, let's just go with a different one here. We'll go with the flag this time, right? And again, that could be anything. That could be a JPEG, that could be any kind of file format that you want. It doesn't have to be a bitmap. And again, you notice I'm just shrinking it down kind of the size of the band here. right? Just kind of shrinking it down the size of the band, stretching it. So, oops, I moved my, don't want to do that. I want to move the actual bitmap itself. So I'm moving this around, just to kind of get it the right size. And then when you go back to your layers here, there's the bitmap that I imported. So I'm just going to drag it down and drag my design under that. And then it'll paste that one on there, So that could have been, again, it could have been a vector file format. It could have been anything. As long as it's in that layer, you're in good shape.
Okay, so we had a couple more questions about the recording. Just how do you find it, what it will be under, and how long it'll take to get up. The title of the video will be the same as the webinar, Creating Interactive Templates with the Flexi Design Editor. We'll actually send out an email to everyone that registered for the webinar with a direct link to the YouTube recording. Also, if you ever want to view any other webinar recordings or any of our other videos, you can go to youtube.com, and then our channel is the SAI channel. You search that and you should be able to find all of our Flexi training videos, including the recording for this webinar. So we have a few more questions here. Looks like we've got a lot of questions. First off, Andrew wants to know if you're going to be in Toronto again for any Flexi training sessions.
I absolutely
do we have any coming up in Canada? Okay.
We do not right at this point. The closest one right now in the north. We're putting one together with I believe it's Advantage Sign Supply in Grand Rapids area, Michigan. That's sort of up in that area. And then we have another one. We usually have one in Boston, and we have one scheduled as well in Washington D.C. right now. But definitely coming up to that north area, definitely.
Okay. And let's see here. Let's go through and make sure don't miss any of the questions. So Emmerich wanted to know, instead of using transparency on your bitmap, can you use blending modes?
I suppose you could, yeah. If you wanted to, sure. Sure.
Okay.
And again, it's what you want to do is you just want to pay attention to your layering system over here. So you can use all the effects that you have up here as long as you just order them correctly in your layering system right here, and then you'll be in great shape.
Okay, and then can I ask, what about vector gradients in Flexi that fade to transparent?
Yeah, we don't fade to transparent at this point. You can fade to white and that kind of stuff, but I don't believe Flexi fades to transparent right now.
Okay. Then Isaac wanted to know, what if you want to put an image on something round, like a ball? Is there a way to make the image wrap around?
Right, yeah, I understand.
How would you go about that?
Right, yeah. So what you're doing is you're actually distorting the bitmap to fit the surface of a graphic, and at this point, Flexi does not do that right now.
Okay. Then Ryan had a question. He said, I'm doing a transparency with a simple square. I made it 50% opacity. When I tried to PDF it doesn't create the transparency. Do you know what would cause that?
Might be something you need to talk to tech support about. Almost always it will maintain that. So I haven't seen that happen on my side. I'd take a look and maybe touch base with tech support on that. I'm not sure what's going on there.
Okay. We had another one here. Can we nest multiple files, with some being bitmaps and some with cut files? The Flexi will not allow it.
Right. Yeah. Nesting is very sensitive to the style of job that you're doing. So by style, what I mean is a lot of things. So for instance, to give you a different example, let's say you're trying to print on vinyl, and then you're also trying to print on, say, a canvas media. Well, you can't nest those because it's two different types of media. Or if you've chosen vinyl only, but your one image is, say, a resolution of, 720, and then the other image you're trying to print at 1440, Flexi will see that those are not compatible images, so will not do with your cut contours and your regular images. It's going to see one is cut contour, one is not, and it will not allow you to nest those. So the way around that would be to, you'd have to manually do it, and basically what you do is you open up a blank screen. When you have all of those images on the screen, there's also a nesting routine in Flexi itself. You'll see it under the Arrange menu, and you can do true shape nesting or nesting, and you would have to set up the file outside of Production Manager to do that. Still with me, Stuart? Hello? I think we may have lost Stuart. I'm not sure. Let's see. I think I can read a few of these. Hang on one second, folks. Let's see here. Are there any updates available for distortion tools? I only have 10 or so. I haven't seen any specific updates for distortion tools yet. When you're working with distortions in the effects menu here, let's just pick when you go to your distortions like that and you click on that big button, you'll see these in here. Sometimes you can mix those together. So you can add a distortion on top of a distortion to create more. So literally, if you look at this set of 10 here, you actually have about 100. It's just, you can combine them in any fashion that you want. So you can also distort a distortion if you want to.
Okay, can you hear me?
Now you're back, yeah.
Excellent. Okay, so let me just scroll back up here. We've got a few more questions.
Sure.
Also, further up in the chat window, you can see the link Anthony posted with the halftone swatch for Flexi.
Okay, cool.
And then Mike wants to know, is there a way to get actual size measurements when working with a scaled down size?
Yes, yes. I'm going to close this image here real quick. And let's draw a rectangle here. So this is an actual 24 by 24 inch square that I have here. So if you go to your, I believe it's over here, sorry. If you go to your tools, there's a little tool over here that goes with all your dimensions. And I'm just going to do the automatic dimensions to make this simple. So it shows it 24 by 24, right? So that's full size, all right? So if I apply that and then select everything including the dimensions, right? Including the dimensions, okay? When I start resizing this, you'll see it actually changes, right? So it'll change according to your actual size itself. Now, if you want to scale this, if you actually want to, show this to scale, there's a couple of ways to do that. One is you can select something, and when you actually select this, let's do like we'll do 1 and then a colon and 12. So 1 inch equals 12 inches. So I'm scaling it down, right? And you notice the dimensions got all out of whack because it scaled that as well. But what you can do at that point is you literally can type in the dimensions if you want to, so that the customer will actually see 24 rather than whatever the small size square that you've got. The other way to do it is to actually go in here and actually create a template. So I'm not going to go through this because it's a longer lesson, but basically you can create a template to scale. So if I have this graphic here, and let's just eliminate these again. Let's go back in here real quick to do this. I'm just going to make these bigger so you can see them. So this is 22 by 22 inches. So if you have a template that you design and you apply a template in here, and I'm going to show you one real quick. So I put this graphic in this 8.5 by 11 inch template, but you can see that the actual dimensions still showed the original. Even though this is a small drawing of the original, it's still showing the original. So my guess is to answer your question, long and short, is I would probably create a template of some sort to design in whatever scale you're trying to design in. So design full scale, then select your template and apply it, and then everything would be kept to scale, but the dimensions would show actual values.
Okay. So it looks like we have another question here from Gerald. He wants to know what type of file is an image once it is masked?
Right. It's still the same format. So if I take, let's import a bitmap here. Always a nice one to import. And let's put a mask on it. And by the way, your mask could be any vector, right? So I'm going to take that star that we have on there and the image, and I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to mask them. All right? So we have a mask on top of the image now. So this particular image in Flexi is two things. It's actually the star, and it's actually the bitmap. And again, if you go back to the design editor, that's the one we used earlier, and you look at the Objects tab, you'll see how this was made. There's still a bitmap there, and you can see it actually shows the entire square. And then there's also still a star there, right? And if you look at Design Central, there's my star definition. So if I wanted like more points on that star, I could do that and not affect the bitmap. Or if I click on the bitmap, I could literally move it around a little bit in different spots if I want to kind of align it up. So it's actually both together. So in Flexi, what happens is it's using this kind of a layering system here. You're not really destroying the fact that this is a bitmap. This will print just like a regular bitmap prints, but with the mask on top of it. So it's actually both. It's vector and bitmap. Doesn't change the format. It just changes the look of the actual image itself.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. So Joseph wants to know if SAI offers any competitive pricing on sign and print to entice them away from other products. It says costs can be prohibitive for smaller businesses to go pro.
I'm not in the sales marketing, but I'm going to say I don't think anybody turns down a sale. and one of the nice things I like about what Flexi folks have done is they're offering now subscription basis for this. So basically, if you sign up for a year, I think you get it for like around $50 a month for the pro version. That gives you all the tools. And you can even do month by month if you want to. So if you wanted, 3 copies for 3 months, you pay for 3 months, and then you don't pay anymore and you don't have the copies. So I like the way they're doing that. And then I know for sure they also offer competitive upgrades for full versions. So if you have another software from another company, I'm sure that a reseller would be happy to talk to you about how to trade that in.
Okay, thank you, Mark. So a lot of people are asking about different locations, asking where the training is going to come to. So I'm just going to post the learnflexi.com link here in the chat
and what
window.
I'll do is I'll actually bring it up on the screen.
And this will give an overview of everywhere Mark is going to be this year, so you can see if he's coming near you.
Yeah, and folks, if you go to Think, SAI, THINK, SAI, right? And once you get there, it's going to ask you where you are. So just I'm on American English. And then basically under the Events page, click on Events. And this will list all of the locations where we were holding workshops. I've got a 2-day workshop coming up in Atlanta. I've got a 1-day in Baltimore, Washington area, 2 days in Washington, Memphis, Chicago, Rogers, Minneapolis. Hopefully it's not going to be cold. Chicago, Fort Lauderdale. This is going to be a very special one, by the way, in Fort Lauderdale. I really want you to look into this one. This is something that we're going to be doing that's awesome. It's a 2-day event, and it's extremely hands-on. And this is going to be laptops on tables, and we're going to build files, and we're going to show you how to do it. And you can bring your laptop, or we'll supply one, and and we're literally going to show you how to make files using Flexi. So it's not, the normal workshops are more driven for larger crowds so that we can pay for the trip and so forth. This one, we're really trying to see if you folks would be interested in doing this hands-on style training where you actually have your laptops. The way you can show your vote for that is to attend. So at least get some information on it when you go through the pages here.
Excellent. Thank you, Mark. I think that's all the time we have for today. But
wow, that went fast, Stuart.
Yeah, it went really fast. But
by the way, any questions we didn't answer, we'll answer, won't we, Stuart?
Yeah, we'll have another webinar next month, and so just jot your question down if you think of anything between now and the next one, and we'll go ahead and answer those next time. We will be sending out an email with an invitation to the next webinar as well as a link to the recording of this one, so you can go ahead and review it anytime you like.
Awesome. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending. We appreciate your questions, too. You guys were awesome.